Welcome to Cerulean Arts Gallery. My name is Michael Kobas, and today we're joined by Liz Price, who's going to speak about her current exhibition, which is on view through October 8th. Hello, Liz.
Hi, Michael.
How are you?
I'm fine. I see the exhibition is in motion.
Yes, I'm going to spotlight it here, and then I'm going to spotlight
Oh,
you just for a minute.
okay.
And so tell us about the show.
Well, let's see. I I've been painting in my studio for the last couple of years on a larger scale, and I paint outdoors occasionally. I really like it, but it's not a habit of mine. I don't consider myself a plein air painter. But I was looking to just kind of reinvigorate my work or just mix it up a little bit. And a friend of mine who's a well-known plein air painter, Elaine Lyle, was putting together a trip to Italy. And I saw this on social media and I thought that looked very enticing, but oh no, money, time, the whole thing. And then another friend sent me an email and said, "Boy, it'd be a lot of fun if you went on this trip." And I was like, "Well, that's it. Obviously, I need to go." So I signed up. And, you know, a lot of the preparation for a trip like that is equipment and getting holders that can hold wet painting panels and preparing pieces of paper and panels that you will take with you. And that's what you're looking at, all of these things. And I have to say, it was so much fun and did do exactly what I had hoped for, which was forced me to get the equipment, get the backpack, get the lightweight easel, get a whole setup that was much more portable, lighter, and also it got me to, we went out and painted at least twice a day. Some days I would do three paintings in a day. And so you kind of really get into a routine of getting your stuff together and heading out and really kind of not making the painting too big a deal in my head. So it was like a light touch. And I like this painting a lot. It's so fascinating to see when she zooms in because it's suddenly huge. It's really a pretty small painting. They're all quite small. But I like that too. I mean, I even do that in my studio. I'll do a bunch of small studies just to generate some new ideas and new ideas about color. And so this one on the left is the first one I did when we were there. It's the view out on the Italian hillside, and off in the distance is the Adriatic Sea, which was amazing and kind of brought a whole new palette of colors to me. Um, and I really sort of approached these paintings as a little more than notations, but they were kind of notational in my approach. Um,
So did you
so that
feel
was,
comfortable there, or did it knock you for a loop for a minute? Did you have to
hmm,
sort of retool your usual painting
no,
practice?
it was just awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
it it was just great because I have to say the air, the conditions were nice. As
Hmm.
long as I had a little shade, you kind of think differently about painting. You think about like the arc of the sun and where it's going to be in 2 or 3 hours. And as long as I could get my little corner of shade, I was good to go. And no, it felt pretty natural. And I have to tell you, it truly was a retreat. I didn't have to, you know, I mean, I had to be a nice person with the other 10 people. I think there were 10 of us all together, but I didn't have to, I didn't even have to clean my room. Let's just be clear. They fed me, it was just all painting. It was really great. Now, on the left, those two paintings are from Italy. This one on the left was really just a little sketch of the railing outside the studio door. But like some of the others, I do get kind of interested in these patterns and just laying the paint wet into wet on top of things. And, you know, it's pretty relaxed,
So
honestly.
are they? like one-shot paintings, or do you come back?
Yes,
Yeah.
they're all one-shot paintings. I find if I work back into things, it's like beating a dead horse. It's really very spontaneous and usually about half, if I'm gonna, sometimes, like I didn't do this on this trip, but usually when I'm painting, whether it's indoors or outdoors, I will kind of stop midway through because things have just gotten too soupy. The palette is a little out of control. And I might still use that palette, but I usually kind of clean my brushes, start fresh so that I can keep the color clear and
Do you ever
kind of go for
scrape
another
the
pass.
painting down?
Yeah, if it's a real dud. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I really am kind of a believer that I mean, the way I paint is that I'm like a vehicle for this experience that, I work perceptually. So the input that comes in, it kind of goes through me, it comes out in the painting, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But there's always some kind of interesting, just as life experience. Now, these two flower paintings, I did this one before the trip and then the other one after the trip. And I had hoped to do a couple more before this show, but didn't get to. And this is, I mean, the exhibit is called Outside, but these were inside. But they were with natural light.
Well, the
Uh,
flowers are from outside, so.
yeah, there you go. I brought them inside. So it was inside outside. But as you can see, I'm interested in just shape and color and light. And I don't know. I didn't think these, I mean, they're quite different from the Italy paintings, but I think as you'll see in the other ones, they kind of relate.
Well,
I was very pleased.
they're
Pardon me?
stylistically, you know,
Yeah, I hope
definitely
they still
used.
look like they're by me.
Mhm.
And then I like the way you all hung the show because it's always interesting the way things hang together. Now there is a lot of green on this wall, but that's what happens when you go outside. So when I came back, I did have quite a bit of a momentum. And this one on the left of the sunflowers was after I got back. That was at our community garden, which is a complete mishmash of stuff. It's very hard to like figure out what the heck you're doing there, but it's a lot of fun to paint for that reason because, it's just kind of overwhelming. And I like that. I like having too much visual information. And then the one on the top was also after I got back. That is up at a friend's house in the Poconos. That is a lovely spot to paint. So
How
I
did
took those
you
flowers from our garden and just took them up there. And
how did you feel painting outside here as opposed to Italy? How did you feel about the light and the atmosphere after being over there?
well, one thing I realized being over there, we were in a hill town, so the views were extraordinary. And this idea of being above things and looking down. So, like this one is from the Poconos, but it was from a couple of years ago. And that I am up and looking down towards the lake, but it's harder to find that situation here. It's a lot flatter. And I'd never really thought about this issue of point of view. Like, in my studio and my still life paintings, I do think about am I up, am I down, am I straight? Is it a field right in front of me? So I have thought a lot about that, this hilltop thing. This is in the Poconos also. A lot of people think that's a waterfall, but it's a tall tree in the middle, two trees. But again, this, it's kind of notational the way the marks are in the painting, just making a reference to pieces of light and shapes. I always love these zoom things because it blows it up so big. I want to do a big painting.
So do you always work from straight observation?
Yes, I find that uh, if I think about what a painting needs, I'm usually wrong. But if I just work intuitively from my perception, uh, it's kind of a relief. And it's not always right, but it's I don't like the thought of having control over what the painting's going to look like, if that makes any sense. This is
Mhm.
another one from the community garden. That would also make a very nice large painting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, do you ever use these, the small ones, like as
Yeah, I've been thinking about
large?
doing that actually. I have not, and I have not ever scaled up a painting, but I have been thinking about that. So you never know. We'll see what happens this time next year. This is also over at the Arboretum.
The
And
Arboretum?
yes, the Morris Arboretum. Now, this is one that I thought about scraping out that little shed because the scale's a little off. It's a little funny looking. But I decided that the marks are so consistent throughout the painting that I was okay with it. I hope I'm right. I don't know. But I am not that painter who can work back into things to get it. Like I don't have a preconceived idea about where I want that painting to end up. It's really kind of an artifact of a process.
So when you work outside, you have to be pretty disciplined about setting up your palette in advance and having everything like sorted out.
No, I should. Uh, a number of people like they have their palette, the paint already on there, but I cannot do that. I have this kind of weird way of working. I always put the blob of paint. I use a paper palette and I mix like a little puddle of paint, like yogurt is the consistency. And so I get them kind of pre-mixed. And then when I start painting, I mix them together. There's a certain fluid consistency that I like.
Mhm.
And then I paint pretty fast.
And are you using a like a medium with your paint?
I use Gamsol, which is odorless turpentine, with a little bit of oil in it because I like the gloss. And then, okay, there are times when I like, particularly in the studio, I will keep painting. I won't repaint, but I'll continue painting. So I do paint fat over lean. I add a little oil every time I'm painting. But these, the less oil you put in, the quicker the painting will dry. So for traveling, having very little oil was beneficial because I just layered these. Most of them were pretty dry, and I just used glassine sheets and layered them. I had a few that were still wet that I had to put in little boxes.
And
That
some you do on panel and others on paper.
Yes, I took a few panels. Um, I mostly had it's like a museum board and paper, like 100% rag paper that I tape. Now this one is on a, birch panel, and I did this when I got back. And that one is the largest one in this show, and that was very exciting because I was really glad to get home. Like to go back to your question about how was it coming home, it was
Yeah.
great. It was great to come back and just have this kind of, like I was breathing painting again.
Yeah.
And I like painting bigger, so it was very liberating doing all those small paintings. So I'm hoping to kind of keep that going. In fact, my goal for September and October is to paint outside before the cold weather really hits and I'm back in.
So are there any artists that you think about from past or present that influence you?
Yeah, all the time. Um, well, the real guy who I think is really amazing is Fairfield Porter. And the longer I paint, the more interesting I think his work is. And of course, I do really like Matisse. And then there's Richard Diebenkorn. And of course, I'm heavily influenced by my teacher at Penn, Neil Welliver.
Mm.
who, painted in the woods and then scaled up those paintings. And then I also think a lot about my good friend Janet Fish, who her color is just so unbelievable. And one of the things I really think about a lot is painters develop certain color habits, like you mix certain colors to get certain tones, or you
Right.
know,
Or your
um,
favorites. Yeah.
yeah.
Your
And
go-to colors.
she, like about halfway through this trip, I was looking at what I'd done and I was seeing some habits, particularly with the darker tones. And so that last little painting I did out there was the two figures by the lake. So that was like a very limited palette. I only had like 4 pigments in that. No ultramarine deep, no raw umber. Certain, like
Uh-huh.
I really made myself mix and extend my range. And that's something I think, well, both Neil and Neil studied with Joseph Albers. He was like a superb colorist. And Janet also, she doesn't, I study her paintings. Occasionally there's dark tones, but they thrive on color. And Matisse is the same way, you know? So I think about them probably not when I'm painting.
Hmm.
And these little paintings these are in Italy. That's kind of a little abstract one. These are just a little more architectural. And I found them, all the buildings there are that beautiful, warm, sandy color,
Hmm.
and more subtle than the way I painted them. There's a lot to think about. And that is so different. The light and the color of that stone was quite different from everything here. And there's Elaine at her easel by that doorway. That's this little town called Monte Rinaldo. They would take us in the van and just drop us off in these beautiful little towns, and we'd just wander around and find something, kind of cool. But, part of the joy of painting outside, and particularly when you have some company with you, because you don't feel quite as vulnerable,
Uh-huh.
but it's just hearing everything that's going on around you, and you remember things like the car that pulled up and parked next to me, and the guy getting out and going to work. Or there was this one, the painting on the left, that third one on the left right there. I was in this little cobblestone, it was like a little tiny neighborhood, and there was this very elderly woman out watering her plants. That actually was sort of part of those flowers were hers. And then this other gentleman, I still don't know what he did. He had a laboratory, he said. We were all he was speaking Italian. I was speaking my terrible broken Italian English. But he had canaries hanging outside his office on the wall outside. And then they were gone. Then he took them in during lunchtime, or, when the sun was shining on them, I guess. Anyway, it was just, all these little things that happen. It just kind of makes you happy to be out there.
It's quite different from studio practice, which is very
Yes.
solitary.
Yeah. I think that was part of the appeal,
Well, it sounds like
which
it was a real rejuvenating experience for you.
it was. Now, I have to say, there is something awesome too about being in the studio and just, you're on your own and you just see what happens. So, uh,
Right. So you're going to teach a workshop next Saturday in conjunction with your show. Can you talk about that a little bit?
mhm. I'm looking forward to that. It's the one day, it's all day workshop. And I I really enjoy teaching. I haven't done it in a while. And I find one of the primary things that I do there is just work with people on technique, like mixing paint and being generous with their paint and kind of allowing the fluidity of the paint.
And it's going to be an Alla Prima painting workshop.
Alla Prima and painting wet into wet. So we'll be doing we'll set up a still life setup with some nice colors and fabrics and stuff. And just and I'm hoping they'll bring 2 or 3 small either gessoed paper or small panels, and we can just knock some things out,
And it'll include a tour of the show. I would.
and we'll come out and look at those little paintings, and it should be fun. It will be fun.
Yes. Well, thank you, Liz, and thanks for the show. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I love showing there. You always make the work look so good. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.